Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome to Finding Certainty. Our favorite day of the week is here. I look forward to it all week long because I either am getting to meet with another interesting and talented guest, or as you may know, if you've been following the show, on the first Friday of each month, I do a monologue. I'm actually dissecting and unpacking the topic of certainty. It gives me a little bit more time to talk on that first Friday. And I actually have an idea of taking all of these episodes over the next 12 months and condensing them down into individual chapters. I plan to put out a book eventually focused on these topics of certainty. What does it mean to find a certainty? How do we find it? How do we develop it? How do we expand it in our lives? Today we have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Mr. Andy Tenney, coming to us from beautiful Alpine, Utah. How are you doing, Andy?
Doing great. Good to see you, Patrick.
Hey, I'm really pleased to have you on the show. I really appreciate you making the time to be here and to share some of your insights. I think can help our listening audience here on Finding Certainty to do exactly that. So I always start the show out with two main reasons why I've invited this specific guest to be with us here on Finding Certainty. First and foremost, Andy has an extensive background in working in senior care, in assisted living, in hospice, in what do you call it, Andy?
It's a skilled nursing and rehabilitation centers, and then home health and hospice and assisted living. So it's kind of three different tracks or needs that seniors need at different times, or may need at different times.
The senior care trifecta, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first reason I wanted to invite Andy, because of that background, because it is something that we all face. We all either have to deal with it ourselves, or we're going through it with our parents, or maybe another loved one. It is something that, as they say, we cannot avoid. Death and taxes, right? It's going to catch up with all of us eventually. I'm actually going through a similar experience. I'm going through as my parents are aging. I'll share a little bit of that in the show today, because this is a very timely episode based on some of the experiences we're having as a family. The second reason, though, I wanted to invite Andy, not only do I think we can gain some important insights into helping serve and care for and be prepared to better serve and care for our loved ones, but Andy also is an extraordinary business leader. He's owned his own centers. He's been a coach for C-suite executives. He's worked in nonprofit. He's worked also in for-profit, and so he brings to the show some very interesting insights about teamwork, about leadership, about, as I said, being prepared for what's going to come, whether it's in the senior world or whether it's just in life and in business. So I thought the blend of those two would make for a really powerful conversation today. So, and he's a heck of a nice guy too. So again, thanks for being here, my friend. I appreciate you. I know you're busy, and I appreciate you making some time. So as you know, if you followed the show for any time at all, or if you've just stumbled across us this morning, we always start out by going back in time a little bit and getting to know this specific guest. Where are they from, and how did they get to where they are? So Andy, where are you from, and how did you get to where you are?
All right. Yeah, well, I'm from San Diego, California. Grew up there my whole life. Love the Southern California sun and the warmth, and got really spoiled growing up. I was, loved playing sports and loved being outdoors. So I was always doing that, and got to play basketball year round, and didn't think much about not having to have a jacket or not being able to play outdoors in the winter. Just so I got really spoiled doing that. But yeah, love that. And, just growing up, I come from a large family, so we were always around people and loved being interactive. And really, really initially really fell in love with wanting to help people. I had some teachers, even all the way from my elementary school, even my sixth grade teacher, and then I'd always pick one or two teachers that I knew just really cared about you, and that just meant a lot to me. And even in college, same thing, and that just really meant something. So I always thought I'd be like a high school teacher and really connect, and be able to coach sports and connect with kids and really try to make a difference in their life because of how you cared for them. Ended up not going that route. I went into business, and like I said, but when I got into senior care, it was kind of interesting because it just transferred that same. I realized it's just the love of people that I have, and that I want to make a difference and help people. So it was really easy when I got into healthcare administration and working in caring for people and working with families who are worried and scared about the new things that are going in their life and what their loved ones are going through, that I was still able to connect and just care. So it really helped accelerate my career in that regard. And so that's kind of my upbringing. And I did a stint of pharmaceutical sales. My degree was in accounting, but I realized real quick I love business, but I didn't sit still very well. So I wanted to do something extra. So I got into pharmaceutical sales, and I got into the healthcare side. And that's how I kind of got into healthcare administration. And then years of just taking care of people more on the facility side and the agency side with home health and hospice.
See, I'm not surprised that that's how you describe your story, because knowing you, in fact, I put it in the episode description. I described you as a servant leader with, you have a servant's heart. Whether it's in your church, in the community, your family, throughout your career, it just bubbles out of you, Andy. I mean, you have this just natural desire to be of good, to do good to others, to serve others. And I mean, you served a mission for your church in Brisbane, Australia, I know. Yeah. I was able to serve, do the same thing over in Rome, Italy. So we have that in common. But I think it's really neat. And I think when that is a part of us, when it's a part of everything you do, even being a dad, you've got 7 children, which is incredible. I think it's a really great example to others of not only how to find more success in life and in business, but to find more satisfaction. Because I firmly believe, and I know you'll agree with this, but it's one of the secrets to finding more certainty in our lives. It's one of the secrets to finding more joy in our lives is to serve others. I always tell people when they're having a bad day or they're struggling, going through some depression or anxiety, I say, get out and go serve somebody, right? Go take dinner to a friend who just got out of the hospital. Go take your kids and help an old person or whatever. I mean, that's the best way to lose yourself, and it says that in the scriptures, of course, but to lose yourself is to serve others, right? Makes sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had, you brought up some good feelings when you talked about that, because that's what, so just quickly to kind of solidify that, one of the best days of my life is when I discovered I only had to be one person. Sometimes you try to divide up, okay, at work, I have to do this. At home, I have to do this. I have to be this and this and this. And, obviously your wife and your kids or whoever else, who your loved ones are, they want to feel special and the most important. So you try to sometimes divide that. But at work, you got to make sure your employees feel they're important and you care about them and everything. And a lot of times I tried to divide that. And then when I realized I don't need to divide it. I'm one person. I just care people, and I can care at both places. And my life got so much less stressful when I discovered that I didn't have to be 2 different people and be a businessman and the husband and the father. I was just Andy, and I was just caring about all people. And, I'm at different times you're focused on different things, but it didn't change who I was.
One of the best books I ever read, I think it was by Ken Blanchard. Don't quote me on that. I may be wrong, but I think it was Ken Blanchard. He wrote a book called The Precious Present. There's another book that's called The Present. And it says that's the best gift that you can give to someone is to be present, right? When you're at work, you're present. You're 100% there. You're focused, you're committed, you're loyal. When you're at home, you're present. Right? You're not on your phone texting. You're not working while you're having half a conversation with your spouse or whatever the case might be. I really think that applies, and I'm sure it most definitely applied and has applied in your career, especially serving in that community, that senior space, right? You've got to be present. And the more present you are, the better the job you do. Would you agree?
Yeah, and it is one because that's the reason I had a hard time. You described it perfectly, or about being present, because that's what I had to learn how to do. Because it's being in that role, I was on call 24/7. So it's like being a doctor, because you're in charge of that facility. Things happen. You have staff there all night. You have residents living on site, and sometimes health issues don't just happen between 9 to 5, right? So
right.
You had to be present in both places and make sure both felt loved and cared for.
In addition to being present and truly engaged in what you're doing, I think it's really essential, and we've talked about this on the show, but it's a key piece to finding certainty, to having certainty in our lives, is to be prepared. That's why we go to school and we get trained and we take certifications and so forth and so on. I know you've got your is it the NAH or NHA?
NHA, yes, it's the licensed nursing home administrator license. So it's like qualifies you. I mean, it's a big program. You have to take a bunch of hours and pass a national and a state test. So,
not easy to get, is it?
Yeah.
So when we talk about being prepared, though, this is in our own careers, in our own professions, taking the certifications and training and so forth, and learning what we need to serve well in our roles. But I think when we're talking about senior care, as we said, everybody's aging. Our parents are getting older. We're getting older. The more prepared we are for what's inevitable, what's coming, the better we'll be able to handle it. The less anxiety we'll have, the more peace we'll have, right? The more we can go through that experience and survive, but not just survive, but actually thrive in the process. You made a comment just yesterday about observing people in hospice and how it was actually a beautiful experience. I want to come back to that, but first, let's talk about this preparation question, because I think obviously the biggest fear most people have is the fear of the unknown, right? It's why we're afraid of death. We're afraid of the dark, afraid of deep water, whatever the case might be. We're afraid of what we don't know and what we're not prepared for. My parents have been a really great example to us of this, because they've prepared to a very large degree for when that day comes and they graduate and move on to the next adventure, right? They have their funeral planned out, their burial plots paid for, they even have their obituaries written. I mean, who's going to speak? They have their finances in line. All these things, they call it their red binder. They have this big 3-inch red binder that has everything in it, passwords and account numbers and so forth and so on. So we're not left scrambling if something happened to one or the other or both, not knowing where their life insurance policies are, their account numbers, and so forth and so on. And that most of the time that is not the case. There are billions of dollars of life insurance policies that are never cashed in because kids don't even know they exist, or they say, didn't she have a life insurance policy, but they don't know where it is. And so I'm really grateful to my parents for taking those steps to be better prepared. Now, sorry, I'm doing all the talking here, Andy. I apologize, but this is really important. Because I was just in Utah and I got to visit with you for 2 or 3 days while I was up there. We just went through an experience where my mom had emergency surgery, got rushed to the hospital, had to have it was a life-threatening surgery. We're lucky she's still with us. And my dad, who's in a wheelchair, requires basically 24/7 care, was at home. I had to fly up to Utah. My brother was out of town for business. My wife, or my sister, has several children at home. So I can work from anywhere. So I flew up and was able to spend the week taking care of my dad. 2 things happened. I gained a whole new appreciation for how much my mom does for him on a daily basis as his caregiver. I mean, he does the best he can and helps as much as he can, but she is a rock star, right? Just everything she does to help him. And suddenly she was out of commission. So I gained a really big appreciation for that. But we also saw areas that were still lacking, that we weren't prepared in. Fortunately, she was coherent after the first day or two, and we could pick her brain and ask her, well, okay, well, what prescriptions does he need? And when does he need them? And how much? And what's his exercise protocol? And when are his doctor's appointments? And, all these things that were still gaps in that plan that they have. They have a lot of the financial stuff done, but some of these other things were missing. And so it was actually a real blessing that I was able to be there this last week, because we wrote out a 10, 12-page document filling in a lot of those gaps. They're still working on it because there's still more we realized that was missing. So how often, and here's the question for you. We're coming up on our first break already, but how often do you see families that are prepared as they're going into that space and working with professionals like yourself? And how often are they not prepared? And what difference does it make?
Yeah, the first answer is rarely. Most people are not prepared, especially when I'm in the skilled nursing rehabilitation center realm. Those patients that come to us, or those residents that come to us, they had a surgery like your mom, like either urgent or sometimes planned and everything, but they come into the facility and they're, the hospital, they're not sick enough that the hospital needs to take care of them too much, and they don't want to have a hospital bill. But they're not safe enough to go home. So they come to our facilities. Mm-hmm. And that's when, we really sit down with them. Luckily, I have a social services department that I work with, and I would go to care conferences and meet with the families, but you would see all kinds of the people just scrambling. And that's when we really start to educate about trying to bring things together for them. So it's tough. And I'd love learning that so I could help people in the future.
Yeah, 100%. We are up against our first break. It goes by really fast. I told you it's not hard to fill up an hour, but I want to unpack this a little bit more when we get back. How can we be better prepared? What are some of the steps we can take? I thought it'd be really valuable for you to share some insights, kind of pull back the curtain a little bit, maybe, and because this is real. I mean, we all are dealing with it or will deal with it, and we want to deal with it and be prepared as well as we can. So I've got a couple insights I'll share, but I'm going to let you do more talking when we come back, Andy. So I appreciate you, man. Don't go away. We're visiting with Andy Tenney. He's a professional in the assisted living. I always forget the surgical one. The skilled nursing, right?
Skilled nursing facilities.
Skilled nursing and the home and hospice care. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Follow Voice America at Facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click register at the top right.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. We're visiting with Andy Tenney. He's a professional in the senior care, skilled nursing, assisted living, and home and hospice. Is that right? I got it right.
Yes. Yes.
It's a mouthful. You talk about it as the trifecta, but there's a lot of different parts and pieces of that. And you talk about being on call 24/7, just like a physician, because people don't get sick between 9 and 5. They don't have challenges between 9 and 5, right? So often this space, this industry, this arena is unexpected. It's due to an emergency surgery. It's due to a fall, maybe a broken hip or something like that. Of course, there are times when it's been planned and they've planned ahead for it, but so often, you started to say this during the break, that it's exacerbated because they're not prepared. They don't know what their parents' wishes are or desires, and so the kids are trying to make decisions. They can even start fighting. There's either some miscommunication or poor communication, and I think a lot of it comes down to fear. Right? They're afraid and uncertain. Speaking of finding certainty, but what do you think that our listeners can do, any of us can do, to at least ease the process, to make it as seamless and as painless as possible?
Yeah, the number one thing is to, talk with your loved one. Talk with whether it's you're the friend, you're the power of attorney, you're a neighbor that's helping them, or you're the son or daughter or whoever. Just be willing to talk to them instead of avoid that. It's not a comfortable thing to talk about it before it happens, right? But if you can talk about it, and like I said, your parents are prime examples. They've written everything out. It's great because, like you said, when you're not prepared and things happen, that fear comes in, and that extra stress causes, sometimes rush decisions. Sometimes those rush decisions are bad decisions. And sometimes the siblings can't get on the same page because they both think, well, I thought mom wanted this, or I thought dad wanted that, or I want this for him, or I want that for him. And that's the saddest part, when you see some of the families get frustrated, the siblings get frustrated, and that just adds to the extra stress and fear of totally unrelated of just trying to get mom or dad better, but adds to the family dynamics. And that's, like I said, when I mentioned that it's great to be in these facilities where you have teams of all kinds of specialists, whether it's, dietary or social services or nursing, or I even had maintenance directors and people that were so good with our residents and always going in the rooms, fixing things, helping them, but sitting there and talking to them. And if you just get them to calm down, when I say that, it's both the resident that we have and the family members, because they're there a lot, and we just try to work with them. And if we can get them to calm down and start working together, and like I said, then we have these conferences that we meet with them called, care conferences, and we just go through those things and start getting those things on. And sometimes they have some stuff, and oh yeah, we did talk about that. This was what they wanted, or they bring paperwork, and sometimes there's an actual official, power of attorney set up, and we need to get that paperwork so that we can, establish which sibling is going to be in control. But the whole thing is, like you said, it's those basics of being prepared, starting the communication early. And then when we need to communicate when in a more stressful environment, it's bam, 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 and we can get things worked out and just focus on keeping tension. Because we all know, studies show, right? The more relaxed you are, the more less stressed you are, you can heal, your body can heal better. Obviously This is senior care. Sometimes these patients are more advanced in age, and even when we're doing therapy and rehab, their body just may not handle it, and we got to slow down, and sometimes it doesn't handle it all, and sometimes we just got a slower pace, and even that slower pace can be frustrating to families because they're like, hey, fix her, fix mom, where she's in a care center, fix her, but we just have to make sure that everyone's understanding, because it can be a stressful time. But if you do it with the right type of care and they know that, then they start communicating with us instead of being so stressed about, we got to do this, 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 and get my mom back home. So it's a lot. But it can be a beautiful thing too. And I know that you've recently gone through that. So it's a powerful thing.
Right. It's stressful. And I can't imagine, I mean, again, to my parents' credit, they've done a pretty good job of preparing for worst case scenarios. And yet even they saw things that they weren't ready for. There were questions we had. If my mom had been gone, we would have been in a world of hurt because of what wasn't prepared and what wasn't known. And they're, I think, doing a pretty good job comparatively. But, you talk about how these are care conferences. Ultimately, we're trying to give the best care to our loved ones. We want to, as siblings and as children, to serve our parents and help them and ease their transition or get them back home. And to your point, when we add stress to the mix, uncertainty and fear and even discontent or contention, that doesn't help anybody, right? It does not help them in their healing process, does not help us in getting through it ourselves. And that's a whole other conversation is we kind of forget about the caregivers sometimes. We're focused so much on who's sick or who's going through hospice or whatever. But I think also it can lead to, when we start fighting and disagreeing, it can really lead to long enduring problems or estrangement, right, between family members. And that should never have to happen, right? I think it does start with fear. It does start with lack of information and not knowing what to do, and then opinions. And usually it comes down to, not always, but usually comes down to, we're trying to do what we think is right, and we may disagree on that. But the more we can talk before and have it lined out, have it written out, what they wish, what they desire, who they want to do what they want to go to who. And that's why we write wills and trusts and so forth and so on, right? Because if we're not talking and if we're not clear or certain on the plan of action, we're just guessing, right? And they say one of the best things we can do to eliminate worry. This is from Dale Carnegie's book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. He says, deal with the worst case scenario in your mind and make a plan for it. Then assume it's probably going to be better than that. Probably not going to be as bad as you think it will be. But he's saying the same thing. He's saying, make a plan, talk about it, figure out what the worst possible outcome could be and how you would address it, and then make plans from there and contingencies and so forth and so on. So, I want to come back to something real quick we said earlier. You talked about how it's actually a beautiful thing watching people go through hospice. We think of hospice as a negative thing, right? People are in their end stages or declining, maybe quickly. You said a comment to me yesterday, though, about how beautiful that experience can be. And I think it comes back to that word care, right? Caring. Mm-hmm. Do you mind sharing some of your thoughts on that? Because I thought that's a really interesting insight.
Yeah. So when I first got into healthcare administration, I was running facilities. It was more on the facility side, where it was a physical rehabilitation center, skilled nursing and physical rehabilitation. So most of our focus was on trying to, do physical therapy, OT, PT, speech, everything, try to get people better and get them back home. But then, some people don't, or we also have a wing that has long-term care. And so sometimes, their bodies are just done. And no matter what the doctors have done and whatever we've tried to do, it's just their time. And I always used hospice as a last resort. And like you kind of talked about, thinking like hospice was a negative thing, because it's like, oh, they're dying. That's sad. We don't want to talk about that. That's another uncomfortable thing to talk about. But when I for the company I was working for, they needed somebody to run their home health and hospice division. And I was really interested in that, because I'm like, oh, I would love home health, because we're always doing rehab. My office was right across the hallway from our rehab department. And so I loved seeing the patients come and go, do their workouts, try to get better, stronger, seeing them progress. That was my favorite. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to love that. Now we can do it in their home with home health. And I can see people, get better, and they don't have to come to a facility, which most people don't want to come to a facility, right? So I was really excited about the home health side. I knew I'd like that, but there are separate home health and hospice agencies, but a lot of people run a home health and a hospice agency together. And so as I got into the hospice side and was running that, I got to know my nurses. I mean, I didn't know all the programs that exist in a hospice program. It's not just going out and taking care of them while they pass away. It's caregivers galore. I mean, you have chaplains and social services workers. You have just all kinds of counselors. And there's a whole, and what I didn't know is the whole bereavement part of it continues on even after the passing of the loved one for the family members. They still have access through the insurances to continue to have, counseling through these bereavement counselors or social services who are certified in bereavement and things like that. And so, but the coolest thing is when I said it was a beautiful thing is because I saw families come together like nothing else. And it doesn't happen every time, but I had multiple examples of the nurse calling me. We knew this person was probably, only had minutes left or whatever. And so the nurse rushes out there, and sometimes I would have time to go out and be with the family too. And mom or dad would not pass away until all the family got together. And sometimes they lived out of state. And so sometimes they'd have to fly in, and normal medical stuff, you're looking at, whatever medical treatment we're doing or vital signs or whatever, they should not have stayed with us that long, but they stay until that last sibling comes. And sometimes it's just a beautiful thing just because it's as simple as that. Everyone gets along, and, they just all wanted to be together, or mom or dad wanted to be together till they're done. And other times there was conflict between siblings, and they wouldn't go until the family got together and they felt something and it resolved conflict. So it was almost a sacred thing. And that's why I call it a beautiful thing, because I saw families come together like nothing else, when most times people look at it as a very sad, morbid type thing. And it's still extremely sad, but it can be a beautiful thing because it's just another process of life that we learn about. And it can be as simple as a circle of life, but bringing people back together and families, the bonds that it created, I absolutely loved seeing that and being a part of it. And like I said, what hospice does even after their loved one has passed away, the support that's still there for a number of months or so to help support that family.
That's really interesting, because I didn't realize that there were ongoing services like that. That's really cool. Obviously, how someone deals with the passing of a loved one who's been in their life for decades, right? Has been such an integral piece of their lives. I think people deal with it differently. Obviously, it comes down to, I think, a lot of the time what they believe, what their faith level is. Do they believe they're going to see them again? Are they traumatized by the fear of never doing so? Right, the separation. Even when you do have faith, even if you do have that testimony or that confirmation, I think you still have the physical separation and the grief, the loss, of losing that person, even if it's just for a time being. In our family, we refer to passing as graduation. Right? In our church, I think we really look at it more as a celebration of life. I think there's a lot less trauma and sadness and so forth in the funerals or the celebrations of life that I've been to. It's a very stark difference between going to one where you have that belief factor and when you go to a funeral where you don't. And they are just devastated, right? So I think faith is part of it, and that's maybe part of preparing is finding those answers, right? Getting that confirmation for yourself that life does endure, that we call it graduation because you're just moving on to the next adventure, as I say it, they're with the next step. And
a lot of that, like you said, is not necessarily for the person who was sick or passing, it's for the family members, because they're the ones that have to accept it. Sometimes, mom or dad have accepted it already and they're just letting go, but the, son or daughter or other loved one can't let it go yet. So that's why I love those extra services that come in and help the caregivers, help the loved ones, help the family members also So that's
Right.
why it can be a beautiful thing.
Well, and you talk about how it's almost sacred, right? I have friends and loved ones I've seen that have gone through cancer and gone through that experience, and they talk about how the veil becomes very thin, right? They feel close to God, they feel close to heaven, and close to family members. They see family members who are waiting for them, and all these really interesting, really amazing experiences. I married a widow with 3 children, and she said that her husband, when he was going through cancer, she saw it refine him, right? He became very close to heaven in that process, and very, I guess, mature through that process, and I want to make a point about that. When we talk about being prepared and communicating about wishes and power of attorney and things like that, I think it's also important that we talk about things like insurance. I mean, a lot of people don't want to talk about life insurance because they're facing the inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a stark difference between a family who loses their loved one, maybe even the breadwinner, and does not have life insurance, and somebody who does. It's traumatic either way. It's devastating either way. There's the loss, but when that insurance agent can bring you that $1 million check or something, that at least can help alleviate the financial stress that maybe you otherwise would have felt. My ex-wife, my kid's mom, when her husband passed away, she received a nice life insurance policy. It was an employee at Intel, and they had a policy in place there. And that really made a difference for her and for the kids as they were going through that. And so I just want to put that plug out there. Think about that. Make sure you have considered those options. You have to face mortality a little bit and talk a little bit about it to do so. But it can most definitely add to the certainty and alleviate the stress as you're going through these experiences. I mean, and things like long-term care or disability insurance. These are things that that are worth considering. In addition to having a plan, it's part of having the plan. In addition to talking about it, it's part of what we should be talking about. Would you agree?
Yeah, there was nothing better, from my stand as a business, not just as the business side, but because then I knew I'd get paid if they had, these plans, especially if they were like living benefits or long-term care insurance or things like that. But what it did for the families, like I said, we started this conversation as the fear and the stress that would, people are rushed into and sometimes make bad decisions because of it, or their own health goes down, or their caregiver's health goes down because they're so stressed about their loved one, in these situations. So with taking that away from it, like you said, just even normal life insurance, if you can get a check that comes in to help the family, and nothing worse than losing a loved one and losing your home, right? You don't want to. So if you can, all those things that you get set up ahead of time, and like I said, especially in the industry that I've been, what there's living benefits or long-term care insurance, that stress level can come down, and families can get together and talk and make best decisions. And then hopefully with less stress, there's better healing, which, like I said, we mentioned studies show that that's true. So if it's not their time, then we can help facilitate that healing through lowering the stress by setting things up correctly with people.
100%. Well, we're up against our next and last break. We're going to let you look at our advertisers, and they'll look at you, and we'll be right back with Andy Tenney here on Finding Certainty. Don't go away.
Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Voice America programs are now available on your favorite connected device, including Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home. Through streams with Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, listening to your favorite show is as easy as saying the show name followed by the word podcast.
Hey, Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast.
If that doesn't work, try adding on TuneIn or on iHeartRadio or on Apple Podcasts.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
You are listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. Having a great conversation with my good friend, Andy Tenney, who actually recently joined our team here at Certainty Management. And I couldn't be more pleased. Andy is a consummate professional. He's an extraordinary servant leader. And it just turned out that the timing was right. He was looking for a new home, and we're always looking for just extraordinary people like himself. And so, Andy, we're really pleased to have you as a part of Certainty's team. This is kind of a good way to put you in the hot seat. And
no, it's good. I'm happy to be here and love what you guys do. So,
well, we've been talking about communication and preparation and how to avoid the fear of loss, the fear of the unknown, right, and create more certainty in this area, and really in everything we do in our life, our relationships, parenting, business, etc. I was explaining to Andy on the break. You'll hear it if you go to the YouTube channel. But I was talking about how when I was invited to start this radio show, the general manager Robert Cellino asked me what I would do it about. What I would create as a platform, if you will. And I said, I believe we need to do two things to find more certainty in our lives. We still hadn't decided on the name, but it evolved out of this conversation. And I said, number one, we have to be willing to evolve. We have to be willing to change. We consider new relationships, new technologies, new insights and tools, and so forth and so on. Because if we just communicate and talk and start doing our due diligence, there are amazing resources available. There's a lot of education available. There's professionals like Andy and others that can help in that process. And so you feel prepared. Ultimately, it's about being proactive in our own experience. And secondly, I said we have to link arms and work together. From a political standpoint, there's a lot more we could agree on than we disagree on. If we linked arms and dug in and focused on making headway, imagine what we could accomplish together. But the same thing applies in caring for our loved ones, our parents. Reach out to those professionals, get online, do the research, be prepared. So when it does happen and when it does come, you're not broadsided by it. Ultimately, it's about being proactive enough that you're prepared enough that you have peace in the moment. Anything you'd want to add to that, Andy, as the expert?
No, I love how you tie that all back to peace. Yes, that's helped the certainty of knowing what to do to help you make decisions. I love how you have the whole concept of finding certainty, but tying it back to peace is powerful, because when you do things the right way, even the stressful moments and even the frantic moments, because sometimes we do have to react quickly, sometimes we do have to rush and make quick decisions or do things that we're going to do, or stop what we're doing that was a good planned thing and then move to another path that's we see is the right way. And it can be hectic and stressful, but you can still if you do it the right way, you can still have peace within you. And that's what I've discovered as I've gone through many ups and downs in my life. And that's what I always try to remember, and to center myself and help others to do that. One of my favorite things was, just real quickly here is, I'm a big John Maxwell fan, and he had that book of 15 laws of valuable growth. And one of them was the law of the lid. And it's basically that concept of you can't give what you don't have. And so like, if I try to better myself so I can help other people, because I can't help them with things I haven't learned or haven't gone through or haven't done or haven't experienced. But if I'm always trying, the law of the lid means like you have a lid and you can only go so high to it. And you can only like help people down below it. So if I can keep hiring my lid, I can fit more in my canister or bucket or my life, whatever the ceiling is where that lid is. If I can keep raising that, then I can give more and more down below. So, but like I said, I'm trying to do that while issuing peace, because then that calms people down and everyone can make better decisions.
Right. Well, it definitely applies in all areas of our life, right? In our relationship. I mean, I read marriage books all the time. I just read a great book called Real Love by Greg Bear. And I've read a number of books about relationships and about marriage that helped me try to be a better husband. Parenting books helped me try to be a better father. Business books help me try to be a better business leader, And as we keep raising our lid, as you call it, or as John Maxwell refers to it as, we're able to do two things. We're able to provide greater service to those around us, and we're able to enjoy more peace ourselves. And so there's this double-edged sword. We can do more and enjoy it more in the process, right?
Yes.
Right? It's not as traumatic or as challenging. I mean, life comes at us fast, right? It's mortality. Right? We're going to have loss. We're going to experience sickness and challenges, and the list goes on. All we can do in life to find more certainty is to weather the storm, try to have water off a duck's back, and try to not just get through it and survive, but I always say actually thrive in the process. The better prepared we are, that helps. The more we talk about it and communicate, that always helps. And ultimately, it's how can we go through it as smoothly and as slowly and as carefully as possible. I think of it as a communication, right? They say the longer you take to respond to something and actually respond to it thoughtfully and methodically rather than reacting quickly, the longer you take, usually the better the response, right? Same thing applies here. The more prepared we are, the more we've talked about it, the more slowly and calculatingly we can do that. I don't know if that's a word, but the easier it is, right? And it's going to be a hard experience, but it doesn't have to be a devastating experience. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming experience if we are prepared, we talk, and we go through it with control, I guess. I don't know if that's the best word for it, but I mean, can you think of a good example from your career where you saw someone who was really well prepared and was able to go through this experience without it destroying them, without it tearing their family apart or being more difficult than it had to be? Can you think of any examples?
I don't think I've had anyone as prepared as your parents that already have a big book read out, all the, written out of what they do. But I have seen families that when we start to meet them and do this first care conference to find out the background, where we're going, what's the overall plan, that they do bring stuff in. They bring in their policies, they bring in the life insurance, they bring in things that they have. They say, hey, this is what mom wants, and it's written out. So yeah, I mean, it's when that happens, I mean, we can just go through it all, set it up, and start implementing it. And that's the beautiful thing, to focus on the implementation versus the creation and the fighting about what the creation should be. Right. And that's one of the things, the industries that I love, what I came from, is like, we had a whole, what we call IDT team. It was an interdisciplinary team from all the different departments, whether it was like nursing, social services, dietary. And like I said, I even mentioned I don't include all my staff, like even maintenance would be in there because they're up and down in the floors and in and out of the rooms. Anybody could contribute to see. And this is, like I said, again, with the family members, they're having contributing when we're all, because I see it differently as the business leader, as the financial responsibility and the clinical financiality for the building or the facility. My director of nursing only sees it, as a more of a clinical thing. A social services sees it the way, dietary sees it. All these different people see it in different ways. And so we're all collaborating on what could be best for the patient. And if we can just do that instead of saying, focus on like, well, family doesn't know what they want yet. And we're trying to make decisions for them. But if we work with them in these care conferences and we're all have different ideas of what would be best for the patient, we can find what really is versus just one opinion's thinking about what's best for that patient. So I love coming together like that and getting all the best ideas to make the best decision for these people that are, could be going through a lot of fearful situations and help ease that pain.
Right. Well, it's about collaborating versus, it's really about collaboration versus contention and confrontation, right?
Yes.
I mean, the one is so much easier than the other. The more prepared we are, the less afraid we are. The more we've talked about it, the less uncertainty there is. There's more peace, etc. I want to make a quick plug. One of our providers, and you know this, Andy, anyone who's listened to us for a while knows, we're always looking for ways to help our clients to have more certainty, right? To prepare for the future. We have a program that can help any business owner, any entity have 15 free benefits. They're zero cost benefits. They're paid for by FICA tax savings we can create. And it gives an employer the ability to give their employees more certainty. Now, there's another tool, though, that we've recommended for some time called the Life Exec Life Management System. Every senior care professional should know about this tool. It's a platform that was created, digital platform, fully encrypted, where a customer or a user can go in and enter all of their important information. They put their passwords in there. They can load their documents, their last messages, instructions, powers of attorney, etc. They can even put contacts in there with their contact information, where a click of the button, they can be notified. They can have whatever documentation they want them to have, et cetera, et cetera. This is a free program that we provide our customers. Encourage anyone listening to download it, check it out. It's called the Life Exec Life Management Solution or system. You can go to www.certaintymatters.com and download this platform for free. We pay for it. So highly recommend it. It received the #1 life-saving award from FEMA a couple of years ago. It's extraordinary. So, Andy, we're about out of time, man. I'm always amazed by how fast the time flies. We've got about 60 seconds left. Any last thought you want to share real quick?
Well, just summing up kind of what you said, that's exactly like you mentioned that I'm part of your team now. And that's why I am part of your team, because we can provide these services, whether it's the, extra benefits to the employees at no cost to them, including a guaranteed issue, life insurance that'll help with, some of these stresses that happen in life.
Right.
But then also that, like you just talked about, that life exec plan where it's like, it organizes everything, puts everything in, it gets those answers for you. So you are prepared, because like the #1 thing we've talked about is lowering that stress so that people can be at peace, make the right decisions, and have more certainty in their life.
That's right. This tool enables you to communicate today and talk about what you need and assemble and organize what needs to be organized. And then in the event of an emergency or a crisis, to communicate with those who need to know. Imagine if you're going to the hospital and in a click of the button, you could notify your attorney, your doctor, your siblings, your children with one click of a button. Talk about creating certainty in that situation. So thank you for being here, Andy. And thanks for being on Finding Certainty with us today. If you're a new listener, we appreciate you stopping by. If you're a repeat patron, we really appreciate your camaraderie and your support. We wish you the very best. Have a great weekend. Certainty is out there. We know how to find it, and we can help. We wish the very best. Have a great weekend, and happy Memorial Day weekend, right? Isn't Monday Memorial Day?
Yes,
all right.
It is.
Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.